Good afternoon, guys. We've heard a lot of catchphrases today, the Indian century, Viksit Bharat, DPI, but the phrase that resonates most with market men is what his boss used to say, that the four most dangerous words in the English language, or the four most expensive words in the English language are, this time it's different. Is it different? To cut through the cacophony of clutch phrases that we've heard today, I'm joined by Mark Mobius. Just to introduce him, he is considered the Indiana Jones of emerging markets. He lives in Dubai, but he travels every other day. He's written 12 books, and he's considered now the father of emerging markets. Mark, welcome, and thank you for the chat.
Thank you. Nice being with you.
Mark, I talked about Sir John Templeton. And he was your first boss almost.
Exactly.
What did you learn from him about emerging markets that still resonates with you?
Well, the first and foremost thing is that he was a global investor. You know, he said, look, if you want to find the best bargains in the world, of course, he was a bargain hunter. The best thing to do is look globally, not only look in the US. And you must remember when he started, that was in the late 30s, 40s, Americans thinking of investing overseas was a very strange thing. And he was the guy that really started it all. And then in 1987, he started the very first emerging markets fund listed in New York and asked me to head that up. So it was really an incredible beginning for me because in 1987, things were not too developed in emerging countries in terms of stock markets.
Think global is what he taught you, right? And
exactly. He thought
Japan was his first global market that he kind of saw as opportunity.
No, he was investing globally before that. He was one of the first investors to go into Japan from the US. But emerging countries was a new field. And at that time, I was living in Taiwan. And I had been working for a broker in Hong Kong. And I'd gone to Nassau, Bahamas to present to him. And he probably thought of me as probably a good sacrificial lamb to go into emerging countries. Because we raised $100 million. In those days, it was a heck of a lot of money because there were only 5 markets we could invest in. India was closed. China was closed. All of Latin America was closed. It was only a few countries in Asia.
Philippines, Indonesia.
Philippines, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and Mexico. That was it.
Which leads me to my next point, Mark. Why do you think some countries become rich and some countries remain poor?
Why do
some countries become rich and why do some countries remain poor?
Well, it's really, you know, this is one of the reasons why emerging countries and emerging market concept was so important because the World Bank and the IFC, these international organizations, began to finally realize that if you want to create wealth, you've got to create a market economy. In other words, you've got to have free enterprise. You've got to have entrepreneurs, free of government interference. That was a critical decision by these organizations because, you know, I studied economics at MIT.
Yes.
And all the economists were racking their brains. How do you make countries rich? In those days that were called the third world, the poor, the underdeveloped, and so forth and so on. And after all this research, they finally came to the realization that, yes, you had to have good regulation by the government as sort of an umpire, but you had to have a market economy. And with a market economy, you need stock markets to raise capital. So that was really a big turning point for me and I think for the rest of the world.
So China became rich or richer despite having a political system that wasn't free, but a market economy that was free?
Exactly. If you remember Deng Xiaoping, what he said, I don't care if the cat is black or white, as long as he catches the mice. Yeah. And another quote that he made was that to become rich is glorious. I mean, that was a revolutionary statement for a communist to make. And that's, I think that's the reason why China has become what it is today.
You follow companies and you follow countries for a living. When you follow companies, Mark, give me a financial metric that you look at. Is it P ratio the most important thing you look at, or the other financial metrics you look at?
I don't look at PE the way I used to. In the past, everybody was looking at PE. And I found that this was not a very good metric because the E of the P, the E was always backward looking. You know, they of course, they tried to make projections of the E, but they really didn't do it very well, and it wasn't not very accurate. So the metric that I look at now is return on capital, return on equity. This metric is very, very important. Because interestingly enough, the other metric we look at is debt equity. And if you have a high return on capital, you usually have a very low
Return
debt
on equity.
because you know you're generating cash. So I look at that, and I also look, of course, at earnings growth. But probably the most important element in all this is the quality of the management. What kind of people are you dealing with? Which is why I travel a lot and to meet managements to see who they are, what they look like. Of course, you can be misled, but
I have to ask you this. You're 88, you look 68, and while you find long-term stocks, what is the key to your long-term health?
by the way, I love being 88. You know why?
No, why?
I can go to a ticket counter and say, I'm 88, give me a discount.
Senior citizens
So,
discount.
you know, every place I go, I'm getting discounts. It's wonderful. And the other wonderful thing is, at least in the Middle East, and also here in India, very often I'm on a train standing up and people give me their seat.
Seat, yes.
Which is kind of embarrassing for me to say, do I look that old? I mean, come on. But anyway, it's nice to be 88. Well, I'm constantly learning. One of the things that I found out was that in order to remain healthy, you have to exercise every day. So every morning I'll get up. This morning I got up at 7 o'clock. I went down to the gym, got on the bicycle for a half hour. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as I say, I'm constantly learning. And I recently read a book called Grain Brain, which I recommend to everyone here.
The brain drain.
Grain Brain. Grain
Okay.
Brain.
Grain brain, okay.
And basically, the author says, look, get rid of bread. Get rid of grains, because it's not good for the brain.
Right.
But the other interesting thing he mentions is that curcumin,
Say that again, please.
curcumin
Kirkman, okay.
that you have in Indian food is very good for the brain, which is why I think there's so many intelligent Indians. I think it's your diet. All your spices are helping your brain. And curcumin is one of the top ones. But there are a lot of things that I'm learning as I read health books. One other very interesting thing about this book is he said, don't worry about high cholesterol. You know, everybody worries about high cholesterol. I've had high cholesterol all my life. I had very high cholesterol. Every time I go to the doctor for a checkup, he said, okay, you got to take statins. And I was always suspicious. And I said, I don't like the idea of statins, the side effects and so forth. Sure enough, this book says statins are no good for you, and don't worry about high cholesterol. What you should worry about is what's the general health of your body, because cholesterol is essential for your brain. Your brain is made up of cholesterol. So I'm constantly learning these things, and of course every day I take vitamins. And another thing I've been taking recently, which I recommend to everyone, I'm not a doctor, I better not make a recommendation, but one of them is metformin.
For diabetes.
Metformin, because I've met a few doctors who treat diabetes patients, and they said that they found out that the patients taking metformin live longer.
And you're proof of that.
No, but I don't know whether that's the effect, but that's helping.
But you talked about long-term longevity. But for the last 10 years, the Dow and the S&P 500 have outperformed emerging markets. So is emerging markets still a place to be?
Actually, if you look closely, you'll find that India has outperformed the US
India
market,
has, yes.
S&P. And recently, with the resurgence of China, the emerging market, MSCI Emerging Market Index is outperforming the US market. So the problem with emerging countries or emerging markets is that they're so varied. You lump them into one big pot, and of course the outliers tend to drag down the rest. And you've seen that in the case of China recently. But the bottom line is that emerging countries are still, on average, growing at double the rate of the developed countries. Now, if a country is growing at double the rate of another country, that stock market is going to do better over the long term.
Mark, though, in your experience, do you feel there's a relationship between GDP growth and the stock market? Do they always move in the same direction?
They won't move in the same direction, but the general trajectory will be that way. If you have a high growth country, you're going to get high growth companies and therefore high growth market.
But can it be priced in at some point? Can the valuations, can the market GDP growth continue, say like in China, but the market not perform?
Well, you must remember, in the case of China, the GDP has gone down. They've had a big downturn in the market, and of course in the GDP, and that's been reflected in the stock market as well. But one other important point, and by the way, our previous speaker made a very interesting, shocking comment. He said that the second largest market in the world for them, Bernard Richard, is India. Now think about that. Now here's a company that's not listed in India, I don't think, is it?
French.
It's listed in maybe the US or Europe. So what we're doing now is thinking, let's not just focus on emerging market stock markets. Let's look at the US market. Let's look at the European market, because a lot of these companies are making money in emerging countries.
You know, it's very, Warren Buffett was asked the same question in '87, the year you started, and he said, my exposure to emerging markets is through Coke.
Yeah,
because Coke sells in 100 countries of the world.
Exactly.
Let me bring you back to India since you started on the topic. It's been the third term of Prime Minister Modi's government. The stock market is saluting him. What are the reforms that you think he got right?
What he got right was trying to be all-encompassing to all the people of India through digitization.
The first thing is digitization.
That, I think, was a revolutionary idea and concept that included everybody. He was inclusive, and it accelerated what was happening in the market. I never forget, it was 5 years ago, when they were starting the program with the card, the magnetic card. I went into this little village. There were no roads. You know, the houses, you know, very poor village. They were doing the ID.
The Aadhaar ID.
They were taking the eye picture, and of course some people didn't have fingerprints. So to me, I thought to myself, this is revolutionary. Because after these people got their card, they went around the corner to a representative of the bank and opened a bank account.
Bank account. And now you can transfer money seamlessly.
Exactly.
UPI payment.
Exactly. This is revolutionary.
Digital infrastructure, of course, everyone has complimented India head and shoulders thanks to Modi's leadership. What other things did he get right?
I think the other thing he did right was to open up more and more because I always think of India as the United States of India, because they're different states.
Different states.
I mean, it's mind-boggling when you think about it. Here, you're one nation, but you're all speaking different languages. And it's not only spoken languages, written languages are different. So what did he do? The first thing he did was unify the tax system, the cross-border taxes.
GST.
This is an incredible
Incredible
accomplishment.
change, yes.
This is something that, you know, probably would have taken a century.
Politically impossible to do, and yet that went through
he did
Parliament.
that. It's an amazing accomplishment. So that set the stage for more communication between the states. I remember one time we were driving from one state, it was in the south, I can't remember what state it was. We were going from one state to another, and we stopped. The car stopped. I said, wait, what's happening? He said, we have to get permission to cross
Right, even for tourist car, rental
mean, this is
car,
a-
buses.
So, I mean, what he's done is begun the unification of a country, which is quite remarkable. But at the same time, what is really remarkable, I think, which is a great strength of India, is the incredible diversity. The fact that you have these different cultures, different languages, which results in incredible creativity. You know, you must remember, at the end of the day, future is with creative people, people who are creative.
The
That's what's-
intellectually property owners.
That's what's going to create wealth going forward.
Mark, you've publicly said that you're very bullish on the Indian real estate sector, the Indian semiconductor sector. What's the case there?
I think in the case of real estate is that standard of living is going up and people want homes and you got to meet the supply.
And you
No
can't
question.
manufacture land.
And you got to go for it. You got to either build up or you've got to go into other remote areas. So I think this is going to be very, very big growth area. And don't forget, you've got a young population and they're going to want more and more.
More nuclear families happening.
Yeah.
But I have a quibble about the semiconductor sector. India is not going to be a fab power. I mean, I just can't see India, maybe design, maybe usage, but fab power, you think India will do well in fab?
I definitely think India is going to become a leader or the leader in semiconductor production in the future. And the reason why I say that is, first of all, the demand. You've got a market here that's one of the biggest in the world, number one. Secondly, it's a relatively open economy. So you're going to be able to take technology from China, from Taiwan, from the US, wherever. Thirdly, you've got an incredible software industry already. You're the largest exporter of software in the world. And if you look closely, you'll find that many of the very large IT or tech companies, particularly semiconductor companies, are already doing software in India.
The software, yeah. But Intel, with all its manufacturing prowess, is at a 20-year low. Intel, what gives you the faith in the Indian fab business?
The fabs will come here. Why? Because you've got the population, you've got the labor force. And I remember a few years ago, I was meeting an Indian friend of mine, and we were talking about this. And I said, I think India's going to become a big semiconductor manufacturer. And he said, oh no, Indians are not as patient and not so good with their small things like the Chinese are. I said, have you ever visited the places where they're polishing these tiny diamonds in India? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be able to do a very good job here, no question about it. But it requires huge amounts of capital.
Capital, power, clean
and
water.
that's going to be coming.
That's good. Okay, Mark, you interviewed Barron's a few years ago, maybe during COVID time, the newspaper Barron's, in which you actually recommended 3 Indian stocks. You recommended Apollo, APL Apollo Tubes, Persistent Systems, and Metropolis Labs.
Yes.
What do you think of the 3 now? Would you still buy them, or are there any new ideas, particular stocks you care to share with us?
I would still hold them, but I would look at some of the other companies that are coming up that are looking very good. It's really interesting when we do a scan, we do a global scan using the criteria I mentioned.
Return on capital, return on equity.
India, China, then the US. So you can see where the value is. Even now, with a lot of people say, oh, the stock prices have gone too high. And I say, yeah, you're looking at it in terms of PE, but you're not looking at it in terms of growth. So I think there are still plenty of opportunities.
Great. The last bit of advice before I get a rapid fire round with you. What is the investment advice you'd give to your younger self?
What I would say is don't be in a rush. Take your time, study carefully, and listen to the market. Because at the end of the day, yes, we have to be logical. We have to look at the facts. We have to talk to the management. We have to make a decision on numbers. But I have the saying, emotion is the potion.
Emotion is the potion.
the market is built on emotion. So you have to pay attention to the emotion of the market,
The psychology of the
the
market.
psychology of the market, and the way, what people are thinking and acting upon. It's very important.
All right. Let's do a rapid fire with Mark. Mark, an Indian promoter who you've always admired.
Tata.
The Tata Group, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I remember meeting him many years ago, and he was a guy who was a titan of Indian industry, but he was the most humble and the most honest guy. He was terrific, very nice guy.
And the legacy still shines through. Mark, you wrote your PhD thesis on communication satellites,
Yes,
I believe.
yeah.
What do you think of Elon Musk?
Well, it's really interesting. Now, here's the idea and the reason why creativity is so important. Because a lot of people don't remember that a communication satellite, the simultaneous satellite, with 3 satellites, 26,000 miles in the air, it looks like it's moving at the same rotation of the Earth. So they appear stationary. Who thought of the idea? Arthur Clarke, a science fiction writer. He included this concept in one of his science fiction stories. And Hughes Corporation caught up on this. And at that time, President Kennedy, when I was doing my thesis, was trying to break up AT&T, which was a telephone monopoly in America. And there were 2 competing ideas, a simultaneous satellite like Hughes, and the satellites that were low altitude that had to be tracked. And of course, AT&T, they were the only ones that could do that.
Right.
And thankfully, Kennedy and the Congress decided on the simultaneous and that was my first stock idea. I bought Comsat Corporation.
Yes, I remember hearing that. Okay, from satellites to cartoons. You're very fond of Charles M. Schulz. Why? Snoopy.
No, I got involved with Snoopy and the Peanuts business because I had a consulting company in Hong Kong. And of course, I was doing all kinds of consulting. In fact, I came to India once to do a project on the leather industry for the UNDP. But anyway, one day a lady from California arrived in my office and said, we're looking for manufacturers of toys. And I said, well, what kind of toys are you doing? She said, we got the rights for all of the Peanuts characters, Snoopy, Charlie Brown, all the rest of it. So we found manufacturers in different parts of Asia. Then I said, why don't you start selling this here? She said, you think people would like it? I said, children around the world love toys. So we started selling, and that became a bigger business than my consulting business.
Okay.
So it was really interesting.
I'll ask the audience, how many countries do you think Mark has visited? Shout it out. One more, not more than 74. Actually, it's been 112 countries, right, Mark, the last time I checked? Your favorite city in the whole world, you've been to 112 countries. Which is your favorite city?
Favorite city? I like so many cities. Every city I'm in, I like. I like New Delhi when there's no fog.
And Dubai, because you're settled in Dubai.
I would say for fun, Rio in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro.
Rio, yeah. The Brazilian ambassador would have been happy to hear that. The Brazilian ambassador was here, would have been happy to hear that.
I noticed that, yeah.
Blame it on Rio. Anyway,
Yeah.
last rapid fire question for you. Do you have a favorite Bollywood film and a favorite Bollywood actress?
Bahubali.
Bahubali, okay.
Both the first and second. I like them both.
That's a surprising choice. Any Bollywood actress you can think of?
Well, the star, I can't remember the name, the star of Bahubali was very good.
Okay, great.
Very excellent.
You know,
And the other character I loved in that film was the bad guy, the evil guy. So when I was in Hyderabad last year, I had to go to the Ramali theme park, and I had a picture taken with a statue of this bad guy.
And you saw this on video? You saw this on video, Bahubali, or in the
No,
theater?
I saw it in the films here. I saw it
in
here
a film,
first.
okay, great. you know what they say about traveling, Mark, that traveling leaves you speechless and then makes you a storyteller. But what traveling has done is made you a great stock picker and what we call the Indiana Jones of emerging markets. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.